Welcome to all of you troubadours of the tarmac to this episode of Hangar Talk. My name is Tom Thinnis, and we're still recording from the Bronco Bunker located in my very own basement. On today's episode, it is my pleasure to introduce you to Eric Epplett. Eric Epplett is a international flight clearance coordinator with Kalitta Air. And he is also a very good friend of mine, and many would say that he made a very poor life choice where he spent about 5 or 6 years working with me specifically in the recruitment and outreach department of the Western Michigan University's College of Aviation. Obviously, none of you are here to listen to me, so with all that being said, let's jump in and meet Eric. Okay, so welcome, Eric. How are we doing today?
Doing good. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, well, we're glad to have you. So I know you and I have a long history of hanging out with each other and working with each other, but you deserted me a few years ago and went to Kalitta Airlines, where you're the International Flight Clearance Coordinator, correct?
That is correct, yes.
So what does an International Flight Clearance Coordinator do?
So our department is basically in charge of all of our overflight and landing permissions everywhere we go. So when we're overflying countries, usually you need to have a permit. When you're landing in countries, you need to have a permit. So we arrange and audit the schedule and just try to obtain everything that needs to go to make the flight happen smoothly.
Okay, that's cool. So how did you end up getting that job? I mean, you went from, and why don't you tell us a little bit about your background, you know, what you did and how you got to where you are at Kalitta right now?
Sure, yeah. So I attended Western as an undergraduate, graduated in 2012. Also graduated with my master's in 2015. While getting my master's, I worked with you, doing recruitment and outreach, and recruiting new Broncos to come study aviation. And then a couple years ago, saw the job posting for the job at Kalitta, thought it sounded interesting, applied, and here we are. Two and a half years now. So, but it's good. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot different than what you and I did all those years.
Well, ultimately, many people would say that you made a poor life choice working with me for those few years that you did, or those many years that you did. But I know that Kalitta has a tremendous asset with you working in there. So, what really kind of prepared you for the job at Kalitta? I mean, because you graduated, was it what was called Science and Administration, correct? Which is now morphed into the Aviation Management and Operations degree. What about that really helped you for the career track? You're almost into a decade out there now working, so you're getting old just like me. But
I know. But yeah, so a lot of the courses really set me up well for this. There were certainly the airline management courses, and then also, I think the international aviation kind of helped out a lot because that's all we do is international flying. So we're all over the world. We go to a lot of different places, anywhere from Europe, U.S. military bases in the Middle East, and China. So we encapsulate the globe. Also, one of the courses that really helped was crew. What's it called? Crew
resource.
Oh yeah, crew resource. Okay, crew resource management. Jeez,
it's early morning while we're talking, so
yeah, I know. You got my bourbon in my coffee. Crew resource management with Gil Sinclair, and honestly, working in the operations floor, that's all it is. I'm sitting there. I have to talk to not only our team, but then our dispatch team, keeping the manager on duty informed, even sometimes talking to the pilots and helping them out. So it really is a lot of crew resource management and understanding, the crew aspects. Certainly helped in this job that I'm currently in.
And it's interesting because a lot of times when people think about crews in aviation, they typically are thinking about the pilot and the crew that inside the aircraft, but the crew actually extends way beyond it. I know our dean, Captain Dave Powell, talks a lot about that when he was a pilot for United Airlines, that his crew, it wasn't just the other pilot that was in the flight deck with him and the flight attendants. It was the maintenance techs. It was the scheduling and the dispatching. It was all aspects of that. And so it's interesting that how taking crew resource management can actually augment even the experience on the backside where most of the work actually happens in aviation.
Definitely, yeah, and I can tell you a bit of a story about the crew resource management. Year and a half ago, we had when India and Pakistan were feuding, we had a plane popping up out of Afghanistan heading towards Pakistan. We had one inbound to India from Europe, one outbound of India going to Europe. And the one coming up out of Afghanistan, all of a sudden they called and said, the Pakistan airspace is closed. And we're like, well, that's going to be a problem. So they're talking to their dispatcher, who's talking to me. I'm trying to be on the phone with these agents and, permit vendors trying to say, hey, we got this airplane. It's going to be there in 30 minutes or an hour. We need to do something now. And, really working through that situation, trying to, relay the information to the pilots, relay the information to the dispatcher, making sure that everybody has what they need, because it honestly was a kind of a country by country, hey, we're coming, help us out. So, but yeah, that's one of the since I've been in the role, one of the biggest stories of the kind of the crew resources aspect of the operation.
Well, and then the other part of that, the connecting part of that, is with crew resource management. It really also demonstrates the symbiotic nature of aviation. Everything is interconnected. Airplanes don't fly without all 8 cylinders firing at the same time. And something as simple as, just fly around Pakistan. It's a pretty big country, and then you have things that you have to consider about. Well, do we have enough fuel to do it? Do we have, what are our contingency plans? So all of those things happening behind the scenes that a lot of people don't realize are going on.
Exactly, yeah, and there's even there's been the rare times. The Pakistan instance is definitely a rare time, but there's also rare times where even something as simple as the dispatcher talks to me and says, hey, my flight plan got rejected. China says they don't have a permit for this flight. Okay, well, now we got to figure out the why and see if we can resolve the issue as well. So, it's not always the immediacy of the moment, but certainly the planning as we're planning the flights and going forward.
Very, very cool. Now, for those people that are listening and watching, many people probably don't even know Kalitta Airlines exists. So, what is Kalitta? Can you give us a little bit of background on Kalitta Air and what do they do and their fit in the aviation world?
Yeah, so we're actually a all-cargo airline based right here in Michigan, right outside Detroit. We're at Willow Run Airport. So we've got about 40 airplanes that we're running right now, and like I said, all cargo. So we fly boxes, packages, anything all over the world. Right now, a lot of stuff coming out of China. That's just the nature of the world right now. That's where the goods are. So we have a lot of China flying. We'll even do some unique flights, I guess. We do charters for the U.S. military. We do live animals. So there's times we've got horses. I think we did a charter to somewhere in the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, maybe, with horses, racing horses. And livestock, we'll do pigs, cows, all that good stuff too. So it really is an interesting area of aviation in the cargo world, because it's not just putting bodies in seats. You got to figure out, well, how are we going to actually fly horses from point A to point B? And what does that look like?
That's hilarious. I mean, again, things that you don't think about, flying a horse, because, a box sits there. A horse wants to move around a little bit. Messes that center of gravity.
Yeah. So, and there are special instructions that come with that as well. And then in my world too, in the permits world, the rules change. So whether we're flying, a civilian flight coming out of China is totally different than flying a military flight, and the rules change with the diplomatic permissions. The rules change with the civilian permissions, and not every country has the same rules. So, some countries you don't need a permit to fly over, and that's totally fine. Some are very strict that you have to be on a specific route when you fly over their country. So, kind of knowing that as well, and where the rule change is as you're obtaining the necessary information to get these planes off the ground.
So it's not static, is what you're telling me. It's ever changing.
It is. It certainly is. And even it could change. We've had a couple things just change in the last 2 weeks where countries that previously required a permit now say, actually, for this route, you don't need a permit. But if you're on every other route, you do need a permit. So it is very dynamic and changing.
And then for our pilot friends and our tech op friends, the planes you fly are pretty cool too, right?
Yeah, we have a fleet of 747s. I think we're 26 roughly 747s, 8 767s, and actually we're up to 5 777s now with a new one coming online here in a couple weeks. So we have customers all over the world. We can, like I said, we can ship anything, strap it down and away it goes.
Yeah, so it's what's really cool is that for everybody that was sad when Delta and United were putting their 747s to bed, and the Queen of the Sky still is flying in the United States, just flying with Kalitta Air. How cool is that?
Exactly. Us and several of the freight companies still use the 747 just because of the volume and the payload you can get on that thing.
So what are some, you like I said earlier, you made a poor life choice, and I think you worked for me 4 or 5 years. What were some of the memorable experiences in the recruitment and outreach world?
We had a lot of fun, didn't we? Talk about
the inside of the Tahoe could talk.
Yeah, right.
That we were on.
Honestly, one of my favorite things about the recruitment job was the summer camp that you and I put together. And I remember when I first started with you, and I walked in, and you're like, "Build a summer camp." Okay, sure. Let's do that. It'll be fun. So, but I think that first year that was 7 years ago. 20 or 21 students came to it. I know when I left 2 years ago, we were up to 2 weeks. With I want to say we had probably close to 50 people, I think, when I left. So I'm sure you guys have grown it quite a bit since then as well.
Yeah, it's quite amazing. Barring the COVID catastrophe of this summer, I mean, we had roughly about 70 kids that were scheduled to be part of summer camp, and I think in our interest list, there's about 180 kids that are expressing interest in wanting to come to Western Summer Camp next summer. So knock on wood, we're actually able to offer it, which optimistically I think we'll be able to. But yeah, that was pretty fun, and again, a testament to the skill sets that you learn, and especially out of the management and operations. So I think you were roughly a 22-year-old. Fresh college graduate, and I walk in and say, "Hey, build a summer camp," and you're like, "Okay," but I've never done it before, and it's evolved, and the legacy of that summer camp has grown into what it is now, which is pretty cool. So, I think also what I've always liked about the job is the opportunity to interact and meet new prospective students and introduce them to the aviation and Western's College of Aviation.
Oh yeah.
And all the different places that we have gone to, and Oshkosh and Sun and Fun and all of those different places too. So
yeah, I the travel was a lot of fun. We went a lot of cool places. We saw a lot of cool things in our journeys. Some we probably can't talk about on here, but but yeah, it was and just seeing the wheels kind of turn. Somebody's like, oh, I never considered aviation before. Well, here's some options. And then all of a sudden you're like, next fall you see, oh, hey, I met you in such and such a city and glad we got you here, and a lot of the people from the out of state students, when all of a sudden they show up and you're like, awesome, we got them. They're in Michigan, they're at Western, they want to be a Bronco.
Yep. That's a fun feeling. That's a good feeling to have. So long-term goals, what's in the cards for Mr. Eric Epplett?
I don't know right now. I the position is good. It's changed. It's dynamic enough and changing enough that it's still fresh and new, and there's always something different going on. I don't know. Stay with Kalitta for a little bit and see where it takes me. Maybe other roles in Kalitta. Maybe I don't know. After COVID, maybe jump to the passenger world. We'll have to see. I'm honestly not sure. I haven't thought too far ahead yet. So just getting permits right now.
I had a student ask me that question yesterday, what's my long-term goal? And I said, I'm still not done with this job yet. I got a lot of goals and aspirations that I want to accomplish in here. And my work time frame is slowly creeping up on me. So, but
you still got your retirement clock?
12 years. Yeah, let me see. Retirement clock. Let's see here. 12 years, 0 months, 20 days, and 14 hours. But, who's counting? You'll right. Counting every single day we're in Tahoe. But, it is, we laugh about it and joke about it. But when you are enjoying your work, when you have challenges, when it's exciting, and that's what I think was always cool about the management and operations is the different experiences that you get to approach and engage in every single day. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I got to believe that when you go into work, what you did yesterday is going to be different than what you do today and what you do tomorrow. There's going to be some similarities, but the diversity of the work.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, there's certain days. Yeah, I have my set. I have to go through the schedule every day, and I know I have to do that and make sure that everything is set at least within probably a 72-hour period. Make sure that we're good on requests, good on clearances, and then if I have some free time, I do know that, hey, I can, let's get some stuff done for November and kind of pre-plan. Let's get some stuff done for, the next season coming up. Let's kind of pre-plan, work through some stuff, come up with some new ideas to better our internal processes too. So yeah, it definitely differs every day, and it's not always looking at the same trips and the same flights and getting the same permits. So
yeah, and that keeps you engaged and that keeps you motivated. At least, and I know for me, and I think that's the beautiful part about it. Everybody kind of finds their niche and finds their sweet spot, if you will, as far as what they need, and that's kind of cool. So, just to kind of sum up, what would be some of your words of wisdom for people that are thinking about aviation, maybe thinking about aviation business or that management side of aviation? What would you encourage them to do as they engage?
Engage in a lot of different aspects of the industry. Don't kind of hole yourself into one, saying I want to do XYZ, whatever it may be, air traffic control, airline operations, whatever it may be, because especially in the management side, there is so much that you can do. And, when I was in undergrad, I truly never thought international flight clearance. I would have never thought of that. But also maybe because I didn't know about it. So, you think airlines, you think domestic, but then the international world is huge too. And, there's so many options just at Kalitta. In the passenger world, you think of everything from, airport experience, gate agents type stuff, all the way up to, the operations center, dispatching, and international flight clearance, crew scheduling, so there's a lot of options. So don't get, an idea and just say, hey, I want to do this, but definitely explore, because there's a lot in the industry to see.
So what I'm hearing is keep your options open. Don't get tunnel vision that I want to be this. And, I remember in my time spending with you that as you were working on your master's, you were still investigating a lot of different career sects. And, air traffic control is out there, and then I obviously ended up, into working in the cargo world. And part of that was also networking, engaging, interacting when, at least at WMU, when we had companies that were coming and visiting, talking with them and investigating what those career paths and what people were doing at those various jobs. And then lo and behold, it starts the fog of the career world starts to open up, and you start saying, oh, wow, look at all these options. I never knew that they were out there. So.
Yeah, definitely. And hopefully you guys can get Aviation Outlook Day back next year and just explore everything. Even if the pilot recruiters come to campus, they have an idea about what else goes on. So, you can talk to them. They may have not as much information, but definitely will know, hey, I have to work with these people, So there's a lot of, keep the options open, talk to anybody and everybody. They'll be willing to talk to you back and tell you about what their company has to offer and what the options are.
Awesome. Fantastic. So, well, Eric, it's been a pleasure talking with you this morning. It's always great to connect. Great job over there in Kalitta Airlines. And make sure you come back to campus routinely and talk to our students.
Will do. Yeah. Thanks for having me, Tom.
All right. Thanks. So that brings us to the end of this episode of Hangar Talk. I want to thank our guest, Eric Epplett, and also want to thank you for joining us. Hopefully you had some fun, you learned a little bit, and maybe even had a couple giggles. So thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you on the next episode of Hangar Talk.